Okay, everyone, yesterday we did our big season predictions, and one of the categories was, is this Brendan's final season in charge of Celtic? And virtually everyone said yes, and I went against the grain and confidently put in the wee category, no. It's not been a great start for me, I must admit. Yes, 2nd of August, Saturday. Celtic start tomorrow, the competitive stuff gets underway, and I genuinely am quite excited to see the team in action, but we can get to all of that because there's kind of other stuff going on as well, and some comments, very interesting comments made by Brendan Rodgers yesterday that we're going to focus on, both in terms of the press conference that he gave, which lasted, I think, about 25 minutes and wasn't all about his contract situation and Celtic's lack of transfer business. There were some other things in there as well. And also the Sky Sports interview that he gave as well. The key word that I think everyone is taking away from Brendan Rodgers yesterday is ambition, and although he didn't outright say this himself, I think he very clearly feels that his ambition for Celtic and to keep taking Celtic forward into the next level and growing, etc., is not being matched by those at the club. And as I say, he didn't actually say that, but I think it's fair to kind of infer that from what he's been saying. And I think he was asked on a few occasions, maybe both in the Sky Sports thing and the press conference itself, do you feel that your ambition is being matched by those at the board? And he didn't say yes, which kind of probably tells you quite a lot. He kind of gave a politician's answer to that. So, yeah, not ideal stuff going on at the moment. You will have read and heard his thoughts, I'm sure, so I'm not going to go through all of them or play any of the audio or any stuff like that. A couple of lines, though, that jumped out to me on rewatching it today. You've had a really fun Saturday, everyone. He said, I'm experienced enough now as a manager to not get frustrated. You become quite philosophical. And also the big one I think people are picking up on, it's my responsibility to convince the board that we really need players, and clearly I'm not doing that job as well as I can. Yeah. So that was all when he was just speaking about the current transfer situation, the business Celtic have done, what he hopes to see done for the rest of the window. Things then moved up a step when he was asked about his own personal contract situation and the kind of lack of clarity over that. He's now into his final year as Celtic manager and nobody really knows what's happening. And he did point out that he's actually not been formally offered a new contract. But again, reading kind of between the lines and what he said, I think he expects to be at some stage. But he used that as an opportunity to make the point about ambition. And Brendan Rodgers' point, very simply, was that he is happy at Celtic so long as his ambition for the club to, as I say, move the club forward and progresses and just keep striving to be better, as long as that is being matched by those in power at the club. He says if it's a case of maintaining what we have, then he's not the manager for Celtic. He was very keen to point out that he doesn't feel that his contract situation is going to have any effect on the players this season, the staff, himself. And to be honest, I tend to agree with that. Maybe as fans and maybe in the media and stuff, you do kind of build this stuff up. And there's no doubt we'd much rather have security. But I think in terms of what's actually happening inside Lennoxtown, I don't think pre-season would have been any different had Brendan Rodgers, been signed up for another few years or whatever. He is a professional. He's an exceptional coach. A really good manager, Brendan Rodgers. About as good a manager as Celtic could hope to have. I think the bigger issue here and I guess impediment to Celtic success is what's happening in the transfer window, and also this, I think now very obvious kind of Brendan Rodgers versus the board narrative. And yeah, as a fan like me and you, it seems very avoidable from a Celtic point of view. We should all surely be wanting the same thing here, Celtic to really push themselves forward as much as we can, but clearly from what Brendan Rodgers is saying, he doesn't feel that the ambition he has, and I guess we all have as fans, is being matched by those in power at the club. And you do have to like ask the question, why is that the case? I mean, finances aren't a problem at the moment at Celtic. We get so much cash in the bank, far too much cash in the bank. I know Peter Law was looking back at some old comments. In fact, I've got them here from 2023, I think this was, when our financial figures came out, and he spoke about, the money in the bank and said it's important to highlight that given the increasing gap between the sums able to be earned between the Champions League and the Europa League, it is vital that we retain a cash buffer in reserve. History tells us that we will not always qualify for the Champions League, and the benefit of holding cash reserves affords us the optionality of managing through seasons where we participate in the Europa League, blah, blah, blah. That maybe gives a bit of an idea of what's going on here at Celtic, but also I think there is an element of like, Brendan Rodgers was backed last season. I think we spent around £40 million last season, and you look at like the main players we signed, so Bernardo, Ida, Trusty, Engels, was that I think roughly 30 million on those four, which is a lot of money for Celtic, and kind of Ida's the only one of those four that like will probably start the game tomorrow, and that's probably only because we sold Kyogo and didn't replace him. So I don't know if there's an element of Celtic feel that money hasn't been well spent. The truth here is that it's like we don't know what's going on, and that's the frustration as fans. There's no like transparency here. There's no idea about what the Celtic plan is. So I still think we'll get in, a few players in those attacking areas, and I still think Celtic will spend pretty decent money between now and the end of the window, which is still got about a month to run. I think the concern is that there doesn't appear to be like a proper plan here at the club. And we've spoken about it all summer, but you've got like these club signings that Brendan Rodgers doesn't appear to have too much time for. And then you've got the kind of Brendan Rodgers signings that just don't really seem to be happening this summer the same way they were last year. Doesn't seem to be any sort of proper plan in place here for Celtic transfers, and it all just feels a little bit all over the place. So, yeah, and to be honest, my main point I want to make here, and hopefully this is coming across in the kind of way I'm talking about this, but God, it's just so boring. Like, it's just so boring and tiresome constantly every single transfer window, and certainly every summer following Celtic when Brendan Rodgers is in charge. And that's not me like blaming Brendan Rodgers for this. Clearly, in my opinion, the majority of the blame lies with the board and their lack of kind of desire to take us forward. But it just feels like constantly when Brendan Rodgers is our manager that there's just this friction between him and the board, and he wants one thing and they want another. I still think we'll be okay this season. I think we've got the best manager in the country. He's a really good manager. I think we've got the best playing squad, and I think we'll sign in the positions that we need. Certainly the majority of them, right wing, centre-back. Clearly we've got someone coming in who'll probably sign a striker as well, or certainly would hope that would be the case. I still think we'll be okay, but it could all just be so much better. We could all just be feeling so much better going into tomorrow's game. We could be feeling buoyant, whereas it just feels like there's a bit of a kind of a grey cloud above Celtic Park. Anyway, we'll see what kind of reaction there is at the club to what Brendan Rodgers had to say yesterday, whether things are ramped up a little bit. I do remember this time last year remember the Hibs away game where Kyogo had the shoulder trouble and we were humming and hawing about signing Adam Ida, and I'm sure Brendan Rodgers came out after that game, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but he basically said, yeah, we need to sort this out, we need to get a striker, Adam Ida, in because of Kyogo's situation, and we're playing with just Kyogo as like our only actual striker at that point. Sounds familiar. And then I think like a few days later Adam Ida was signed. So has the relationship between Brendan Rodgers and the board changed since last year? Or will we see a similar reaction here? And might it just have been that kind of those words from Brendan Rodgers just to get things moving a bit? I'm a little bit cynical about that. As I say, I do think we'll spend money between now and the end of the window. I don't think the squad we've got at the moment is going to be the squad we go into the full season with. But, that Champions League qualifier, if we don't win that, things are going to get a little bit nasty. One player who is coming in, Simpson-Pusey, hasn't been announced at the point of me recording. I think it probably will be on Saturday throughout the day. I think he was had a medical yesterday, certainly was up in Glasgow. Brendan Rodgers was talking about him openly. So clearly this is a deal that's happening. He described him as a quick, dominant centre-back who's good at progressing the ball. He says it's a loan deal for the year, and that JSP is like a wee bit short of kind of match sharpness, given that he's not really had a pre-season. So certainly won't be in the squad or anything this weekend, and maybe a gradual introduction for him. Also, Brendan Rodgers saying that he reckons JSP will be our last centre-back signing of the summer, and probably our only centre-back signing of the summer if you say that Inamura was a left-back. So, yeah, again, not quite sure what the scouting of the Swedish player Victor Eriksson was the other night. Maybe that's us getting ahead of the game for January or whatever. I would say we should probably focus more on what's going on at the moment, but again, just a wee bit of a disconnect there, given that we're scouting a guy and then Brendan Rodgers is saying, yeah, we're not going to sign any more centre-backs this summer. Anyway, yeah, he was also asked about Hayato Inamura at left-back, whether he's the left-back deputy for Kieran Tierney this season. And Brendan Rodgers talked up Inamura's impact at the club. He said that when Inamura first came in, it was the plan was for him to come in and to head out on loan and develop. And I think Inamura, as has been kind of said a few times, has surprised Brendan Rodgers and made a pretty fast start. However, I did sense a bit of hesitancy from Brendan Rodgers in saying that Inamura would be the kind of backup to Kieran Tierney. I still got the impression that we might look to sign another left back. Again, time will tell if that happens, and it'll obviously be pretty dragged out if it's Celtic doing transfer business. But yeah, use the phrase, we have to make sure it's absolutely right for us in that position. So I don't know if he's still just got a few doubts over Inamura. To be honest, I think Inamura's made a really good start, but I still have question marks over that signing, because he's playing centre-back, right, for Albirex Niigata. We heard that from Ryo Nakagawara, that he played almost solely centre-back. So he's been signed, we've signed a centre-back, and he's playing at left-back all the pre-season, which just seems a bit strange to me. So is that a case of us just not having another option, an alternative to Kieran Tierney? Are we still viewing Inamura as a left-back, as it would appear to be the case? But then again, he's been playing centre-back for the last 2 years. So you know what I mean? It just doesn't quite add up. So not sure what the situation is with Inamura, but Brendan Rodgers didn't seem keen to go fully in on him being KT's deputy. Just a couple of other things to discuss before we get to tomorrow's game against St Mirren. The cooperation partnership we've got with Ayr United has now been confirmed by both sides. So Celtic confirmed this yesterday. We already know Jude Bonner and Kyle Ure have gone out on loan to Ayr United. I was actually watching an interview done with both of them, and they're both young guys. I think they're possibly both teenagers, or certainly, I think Kyle Ure's 19, Jude Bonner might be slightly older than that. But both just really keen, I think, to go out and play. Kyle Ure mentioned, the fact that I think Celtic can recall them at some stage if we see that as the right option. So, can recall them for a game maybe, and then get them back to Ayr. So it's going to be interesting to see how fluid that system is over the season, and maybe if a Scottish Cup or a League Cup tie comes up and one of them are doing really well for Ayr and we think they've maybe earned a shot in the first team, can we bring them back for a game and then put them back to Ayr? Be interesting to see if the club do that. Ayr United, when they announced this partnership as well, also said that a third player will be joining them soon. So there'll be 3 players going to Ayr United. That's the maximum you can have. Who will it be? I was kind of thinking Colby Donovan might be an obvious one, because he was quite impressive in pre-season and appears to have probably outgrown the B team, but is also going to be third choice right back, aka no game time at all. So I think a loan move for him to Ayr United would be a good one. So it'll be interesting to see if it's him or if it's someone else. The club also announced yesterday that Mitchell Robertson has joined League One Inverness Cally Thistle on a traditional season-long loan. So he's a centre-back. And in terms of Celtic B last night, we had a 3-3 draw in the Lowland League away to Cumbernauld Colts. And our goals were scored by Philip Scorb, Samuel Esiguzu in the first half, and Hayden Borland after the break. One other wee note, that our upcoming League Cup last 16 clash at home to Falkirk, as I predicted, thank you, has been stuck in for the Friday night. So that's Friday the 15th of August at 7:45pm. It'll be live on Premier Sports 1 or the Friday night. But yes, before that, we are back to Celtic Park tomorrow and a home game against St Mirren. Flag Day, Paul McStay will unfurl the league championship flag from last season. And yeah, no, I'm excited. Like, I know there's as I say, a bit of a dark cloud over Celtic Park at the moment, or it certainly feels that way. And we've got, I mean, it's a hell of a lot of negativity at the start of the season when everyone should be feeling buoyant. But I am genuinely looking forward to tomorrow's game. Like, I'm really looking forward to seeing that midfield function properly in a competitive game against what is going to be a low block with St Mirren. We know how Stephen Robinson's teams play. They're incredibly well organised. They're going to make it difficult for us. How does that midfield of McGregor, Hatate, Nygren function? Like, I'm really excited to see that, because I think they were really exciting in pre-season, the kind of glimpses we got of that. Kieran Tierney back in his first competitive game, you know, who plays across that back line. There's lots of parts of the game that I'm really excited to see, and I think Celtic, again, despite all the chat with the transfers and stuff, I think the team are in a pretty good place, and I think they're motivated, especially after how last season finished. And yeah, I'm excited to see it. In terms of the team, I think it's going to be interesting. We're only missing Jota. He's the only player we've not got, so it's like a clean bill of health other than Jota. And yeah, I do wonder if the likes of Alistair Johnson and Cameron Carter-Vickers will start the match. Brendan Rodgers said last week that both of them are just a bit behind, as you would expect, given that they only started playing pre-season games right at the end of pre-season, effectively. So will either of them start? I've got them both in my team, but I wouldn't be massively surprised if they're on the bench. The team I've gone for is Schmeichel, Johnston, Carter-Vickers, Scales, Tierney, McGregor, Hatate, Nygren, Forrest, Maida and Ida. And like, I know clearly, like, there's a couple of areas there, attacking areas that were a bit light in, and the bench probably won't be particularly strong. But there's still like a lot to be excited about in that team. As I say, that midfield, seeing Katie and Dyson linking up on the left. You know, James Forrest is just terrific at the moment. He's a brilliant player. So, and you know, can Adam Ida get off to a fast start? So excited about that. Officials-wise, I covered this earlier in the week, but the referee is Don Robertson, assisted by David Room and Craig Ferguson. VAR is Greg Aitken, and assistant VAR is Graham Leslie. So I think we'll be fine tomorrow. I think we'll score a few goals. We've got a really good record on Flag Day going back a number of years, and I think we're even to get a wee bit of sun in the afternoon in Glasgow. I don't know why we're saying we as if I'm going to be there. But Stevie will be there, and he's going to be good enough to make his return to the channel and chat to me after the game as well. So the post-match reaction will be out for you first thing on Monday morning. So bright and early on Monday with hopefully lots to discuss, loads of goals, and a bit of positivity. It's much needed. But listen, I appreciate you all tuning in and continuing to watch. And yeah, thankfully we've made it through the break. Celtic are back tomorrow, and that's enough to put a smile on your face, hopefully.